Ratko Vidakovic, thank you very much for taking the time out to speak to me today. You're somewhat of a friend for the whole industry because you have a newsletter called This Week in AdTech, and
That's right.
I've been a subscriber for a few months, and you have a lot of subscribers. You have somewhat of a following. Whoever I speak to in the industry says that they're a subscriber of your newsletter. What is it, do you think, about the newsletter that people are actually attracted to in this industry, in the ad tech industry?
I think part of it is just a little bit of honesty, a little bit of criticism. I like to think a little bit of humor as well, just sprinkled in as well. I mean, personally, I think that the trades, the Digidays, the ad exchangers of the world, I think they do a great job of covering, all the developments that are happening in the industry. What I think might be lacking a little bit is criticism, right? So I think in a lot of cases they carry water, for these companies, and that's one thing I try to avoid with the newsletter because, I don't want there to be any kind of even perception of bias, right, towards like favoritism for one company or another, or I don't have any axes to grind against any companies, but I try to look at things from an objective perspective and look at it from different angles and give my opinion. So
yeah, because you have you summarize what's happened in ad tech really nicely, and then underneath you will have your take on the whole thing, a notes section, which is usually just bite-sized, excellent, sort of filtered out, cleaned out evaluation of what you think has been going on, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that was never the initial focus. I think the initial focus is really to take, read through the stuff that I think was important that happened in a given week. Because I think maybe 90% of it is noise, right?
Yeah.
So if the way I think about it is, I used to do this actually for my team internally at previous companies. So
I see.
We would discuss the things that were most important that happened in the industry. I would say 90% of it is kind of like almost like a press release, like the articles that are written in a very favorable way. They're almost like veiled press releases, and I think people can detect that when they read it, but it takes a lot of mental energy to read every single article and be like, you can usually tell pretty quickly this is going to be self-serving in some kind of way, right?
Yeah.
So, I think there's a lot of wasted time that people either don't do it, they either don't follow all the developments, or if they do, it's just exhausting. It's a full-time job.
And how do you follow all the developments? I mean, what's a typical day for you? Because you do this newsletter every week, which is quite frequent when you think about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, my workflow is, I have Google Alerts, I subscribe to a number of industry newsletters, so that's how I kind of get stuff into the top of the funnel, so to speak, and then by the end of the week, usually Thursday or Friday, there's 20, 30, 40 articles, and at the beginning when I first started doing the newsletter, I actually tried to read all of them, and my brain just completely fried, halfway through. I couldn't do it. After a few weeks of that, I sort of developed the ability to tell pretty quickly whether an article was going to be a waste of time or not. So from that point on, I just started sort of being more selective about which ones to...
It seems like you're quite aware that people in the industry don't really have much time, especially if you're in a high-paced environment. So you put at the top average reading time, 12 minutes, 11 minutes, which is also helpful. But I also want to ask you, so let's maybe do a video edition of your newsletter. This is your first time at DMEXCO, and obviously this seems to be now an established exhibition for all of the ad tech players. And there's been some seminars as well, and I think you've attended maybe a couple.
I'm attending one later.
What's your feeling of the conversation that's happening around here at this exhibition this year? Your takeouts.
It seems like the themes are pretty consistent with the themes that we cover in the newsletter. So kind of these high-level themes of around transparency, which is always kind of attacking different areas of the industry over time. So at some point it's buy-side fees, another part it's kickbacks, another part it's data quality. So I feel like transparency is this one theme that kind of continues. Obviously, privacy is a huge one. E-privacy right now in the works. Legislation that's spreading. Identity is another big one. So discussions around consortiums and identity graphs for the ad tech industry specifically. And obviously recently, a lot of discussions around what's fair in terms of competition and innovation and features and disclosure and all those. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I love looking at things from a strategic perspective. I'm sure you see, like in the newsletter, I like to kind of think of things from a competitive angle. Why would certain companies do certain things? Because I think it's very easy to criticize. Let's use Index as an example, right? It's very easy on the surface to criticize them, but you can think about why would they do certain things? Like what would incentivize them to do certain things? And kind of look at it from a little bit more of a nuanced angle, and so I like kind of analyzing that kind of stuff from that perspective.
What do you think about the future of these independent players, or in the ad tech and also like in the agency world as well? Like what are the independent players going to have to do to stay in the game? Obviously, not doing anything like maybe the practices like Index carried out, which you wrote extensively about.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for independent ad tech. I mean, the more I think about it, and the more I see kind of where things are going and the patterns and the trends, it seems to me like the end game. And I think there was a VC who basically wrote that every ad tech company eventually becomes an ad network on a long enough timeline. And I feel like there's some truth to that, especially now as you see consolidation. So something I've been thinking about recently is even when you look at incentives and you look at what the role of supply side platforms versus demand side platforms and what their jobs are. So each of them are meant to optimize the objectives of their own constituents, right? So supply side platforms, they're supposed to be working specifically for publishers, demand side platforms for advertisers, and each of them are basically going to the extreme, basically to serve the needs of their clients, right? And that creates this tension where there's this information asymmetry, right? So the buy side doesn't want to expose, let's say, all of the bids for a specific impression, because the supply side could take that information and now they have a better view of the landscape, the bid landscape, so they can manipulate price floors, assuming second price auction. And it's one of those situations where it's a bit of a war between the supply side and demand side. And it got me thinking that maybe there's some merit to the ad network model, because obviously there was the criticism against the ad network model was that there's a conflict of interest. How do they balance publisher needs versus marketer needs? And I feel like they're actually in a position where they have to, they're incentivized to find that sweet spot.
Balance,
because they can't skew things one way or another, otherwise they're going to lose one side of their marketplace. So lately I've been thinking that maybe there is something to the old ad network model, but maybe like a new interpretation of it.
A new interpretation of it. Well, so that's you're talking about basically a full stack or a walled garden, or so you think that's the way things are heading?
I feel like that's the direction things are going in. And you look at a company like AppNexus, for example, they've had a demand side and a supply side offering for a while, and there's criticisms to that, but at the same time, there's you could argue that there's benefits to that as well. For the reasons I just sort of described.
But how many of those could you have in one ecosystem? That's the other thing.
So that's another good question. I think that the way things are developing, and obviously identity is a big part of it. One thing I wrote about in a recent newsletter was that I thought if you just think things through and you think of like, let's say Media Math and Trade Desk and all the major players, if you think about them being swallowed up by a large entity like Amazon or a telco, you kind of get this picture of a world that's sort of like an oligopoly instead of like a duopoly, which is right now. Amazon's going to join the mix, but if you imagine that telcos and other large roll-ups, it's gonna be sort of an oligopoly where you have maybe a dozen or less companies that each have their own differentiated data, differentiated inventory, and it's basically a bunch of walled gardens. So I don't know how great that is for marketers and attribution and measurement and all that, but I mean that's sort of where it seems like things are going, but I mean it kind of raises the question like what happens with the open internet, the open web. Seems like there still needs to be some companies that are independent of all of that. So I think there's still room for a couple or a few players that are sort of dominant in that, let's call it independent space.
Okay, cool. Well, oligopoly, that's quite frightening word. So my next question would be to you, apart from doing a newsletter, obviously, your work is evolved around consultancy, I believe, You want to tell us more about what you do professionally?
So the consulting work that we do typically falls into a few different categories. So it's either based around education, so we do training for companies, and usually that's like a 1 or 2 day workshop that we do. Other than that, we also do research. So companies will commission research, whatever they're interested in, right? And so that's very bespoke. Every company has different interests in kind of what they want answers to. And then third is sort of advisory, kind of traditional consulting. So we work with publishers, for example. That's probably the largest segment of clients. And so we'll do work like audits, strategy work, research for them to benchmarking performance, that sort of stuff. So so we have a handful of clients, and that's sort of the work we do outside of the newsletter.
Great. Well, thank you so much for again taking the time to speak to us today, and hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the day and to have some interesting things to write about in the next newsletter.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks for having me.
No problem.